40 million Americans are living on borrowed time. They just don't know it yet. Buried in federal engineering reports is a number that almost no one talks about: 895 feet. That is the elevation where Lake Mead hits what hydrologists call dead pool, the point where Hoover Dam stops generating electricity. Permanently, the turbines cannot spin without water pressure, and without water pressure, Nevada goes dark. Arizona goes dark. Southern California scrambles to find power that does not exist. Right now, the lake sits barely 165 feet above that threshold. After billions spent on emergency infrastructure, after 2 strong snow seasons that made headlines declare the crisis over, and everything politicians and engineers have thrown at this problem, the water is still draining, and the clock is still running. Because the Colorado River has a secret that 7 states wrote into law over a century ago and have been too afraid to correct ever since. The river was never as big as they promised. The entire American Southwest was built on water that does not exist. If you want to see the crisis with your own eyes, take Highway 93 Southeast out of Las Vegas. Drive past the last casino, past the final billboard, past the edge of the sprawl. Eventually, the desert floor drops away and you find yourself staring down into Black Canyon. The dam is impressive, but it is not the first thing you notice. The first thing you notice is the scar, a pale white band wrapping around both canyon walls like a bathtub ring scaled up to geological proportions. That chalky stripe marks the mineral deposits left behind as the water retreated. Year after year, foot by foot, for over 2 decades. The ring towers higher than a 10-story building. Astronauts can see it from orbit. You can spot it from downtown Las Vegas on a clear afternoon. It is the largest visible watermark of any reservoir crisis on the planet, and it keeps climbing. At maximum capacity, Lake Mead stores roughly 26 million acre-feet of water. 1 acre-foot equals about 326,000 gallons, enough to supply 2 typical American households for an entire year. When full, the lake's surface rests at 1,229 feet elevation. Today it hovers near 1,060. That means the reservoir holds barely 1/3 of its designed capacity. A system engineered to buffer 9 years of Colorado River flow now stores roughly 2. In the summer of 2022, the surface dropped to approximately 1,040 feet, lower than any point since the reservoir first filled in the 1930s. Then the Rocky Mountain snowpack delivered 2 strong winters. Headlines celebrated. Politicians exhaled. The water crept back up. But 20 feet of recovery in a lake that remains 170 feet below capacity is not a comeback. It is a pause in the same countdown. To understand why this crisis exists, you need to travel back to a small lodge in Santa Fe, New Mexico. November 1922. 7 men representing 7 western states sat down to divide a river none of them fully understood. The chairman was Herbert Hoover, not yet president, just the Secretary of Commerce tasked with preventing a water war before it started. The concept appeared straightforward. Measure the Colorado River's annual flow. Split it equitably among the states touching its watershed. These states are Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming. They examined 2 decades of flow records and calculated the river delivered roughly 16.5 million acre-feet annually. Half to the upper basin states near the headwaters, half to the lower basin states downstream, and an additional 1.5 million acre-feet later promised to Mexico. It was handshakes all around. Everyone departed satisfied. And over the next century, they constructed an empire on that agreement. Cities, farms, power grids, aqueducts stretching hundreds of miles. 30 million people grew to 40 million. All of it anchored to a single assumption: that the river would keep delivering. But here's what nobody wanted to discuss. The flow measurements from 1905 to 1922 captured one of the wettest periods the Colorado River Basin had experienced in 5 centuries. An anomaly, a statistical outlier that made the river appear far more generous than its true character. The men in Santa Fe were not measuring reality, they were measuring a mirage, and they carved that mirage into binding legal code. Scientists have since analyzed tree ring data stretching back 1,200 years. The rings encode annual moisture levels with remarkable precision. And they reveal that the Colorado River's genuine long-term average runs closer to 13 million acre-feet. In severe drought years, flow drops below 10 million. The 1922 compact overpromised by at least 20%. A few researchers raised warnings at the time. They noted the measurement window seemed unusually favorable. But 7 states had finally stopped fighting. No politician wanted to reopen negotiations with smaller figures. So they proceeded and built anyway. And for decades, massive reservoirs masked the structural deficit. Lake Mead and Lake Powell acted like savings accounts, covering the annual shortfall with stored surplus from wetter years. But you cannot overdraw an account forever, and the balance has nearly reached zero. The same researchers who exposed the compact's flawed assumptions also examined the current drought. Their conclusion landed like a verdict. This is not merely a difficult stretch. This is the most severe sustained dry period the Colorado River Basin has experienced in at least 1,200 years, possibly longer. To find a comparable drought, you would need to reach back past the founding of Oxford University, past the signing of the Magna Carta, past the Norman conquest of England. The last time conditions were this persistently dry, the Roman Empire still controlled Britain. Layer the worst drought in a millennium on top of a legal framework that overpromised water supply by 20%. Now you understand why federal engineers speak about Hoover Dam in the language of emergency. Before any of this infrastructure existed, the Colorado River owned Black Canyon. Snowmelt turned it into a torrent each spring. Summer heat reduced it to a trickle. Floods scoured the canyon without warning. The river answered to nothing. Taming it seemed impossible. The canyon walls plunge 700 feet. Summer temperatures routinely exceed 120 degrees in the shade. The nearest railroad terminated 30 miles away across open desert. And in 1931, when construction began, a quarter of the American workforce had no job. Over 21,000 men showed up anyway. They earned between 50 cents and $1.25 per hour. Decent wages for the Depression, brutal wages for what the work demanded. The official death count reads 96. Workers crushed by equipment, workers who fell from scaffolding, workers killed by premature explosions in the diversion tunnels. But that figure omits the men who collapsed from heat exhaustion and never recovered, the ones whose death certificates listed pneumonia, while their families suspected carbon monoxide poisoning from engine exhaust trapped in confined tunnels. The construction superintendent earned the nickname Hurry Up Crow. He drove crews through punishing heat, determined to beat the deadline. They finished 2 years early. The result, 5 million cubic yards of concrete, a wall 726 feet tall and 660 feet thick at its base, anchored in volcanic rock so completely that engineers designed it to outlast the civilization that built it. When the first turbine activated in 1936, Hoover Dam became the largest hydroelectric facility on Earth. Today, the power plant houses 17 generators producing a combined 2,080 megawatts at full capacity, enough to electrify 1.3 million homes, enough to anchor an entire regional economy. But here is what the brochures omit. Hydroelectric output depends entirely on water pressure, on the sheer mass of liquid pressing down through intake towers and penstocks. The deeper the reservoir, the harder the push. The harder the push, the faster the turbines spin. When Lake Mead sits at full capacity, Hoover delivers its rated 2,080 megawatts. At current levels near 1,060 feet, output has dropped to roughly 1,300 megawatts. If the surface falls further and older turbines cannot function, capacity could collapse below 400. At 950 feet, the dam reaches minimum power pool. It can still generate electricity, but marginally. At 895 feet, generation ceases entirely. Picture that reality, not as an abstraction, as an ordinary afternoon. The turbines stop. The humming that has echoed through Black Canyon for 9 decades falls silent. The power that Nevada, Arizona, and Southern California have treated as permanent disappears from the grid. No backup facility can replace 2,000 megawatts overnight. Las Vegas loses the foundation of its water supply. The city pulls 90% of its drinking water from Lake Mead. Even the third straw, the billion-dollar emergency tunnel drilled through solid bedrock, has an operational floor. At dead pool elevation, even that intake strains to function. 2 million people in a city where summer temperatures crack 115 degrees, without reliable water. Downstream, the Imperial Valley goes dry. Those 700,000 acres of irrigated desert produced 2/3 of America's winter vegetables. The lettuce, the carrots, the broccoli. The produce aisle from coast to coast empties as supply chains fracture. A regional water emergency becomes a national food price crisis. The dam will keep standing. Concrete does not care about water levels, but infrastructure without function is just a mere monument. The billions already spent bought time, but they did not buy a solution. So here's the challenge where time runs out. The legal framework governing how Colorado River shortages get distributed expires in 2026. The 2007 interim guidelines, the drought contingency plans, all of it sunsets this year. 7 states must negotiate replacement rules. They have already missed the November deadline. They blew past the February deadline. The federal government warned it would impose its own solution if consensus failed. That threat still hangs overhead. The upper basin states draw hard lines. Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and New Mexico argue they never fully consumed their 1922 allocations. Why should they accept cuts when downstream states spent decades draining more than their share? The lower basin states reject that framing. California, Arizona, and Nevada point to their enormous populations, their critical agricultural output, their disproportionate economic contribution. California alone uses more Colorado River water than any other single state. Arizona has already absorbed painful reductions. Nevada has invested billions in recycling and conservation and still faces demands for more. Every delegation arrives with legitimate grievances, but the river does not negotiate. Meanwhile, 300 miles upstream, Lake Powell follows the identical trajectory. The second largest reservoir in America mirrors Lake Mead's decline almost foot for foot. In 2022, federal managers released emergency flows from Flaming Gorge Reservoir in Wyoming, 400 miles away, just to keep Glen Canyon Dam above minimum operating level. The government was transferring water between 2 sinking ships. Borrowing from one crisis to delay another, the shortage has already arrived for the people with the least power to fight back. In Pinal County, Arizona, an hour south of Phoenix, farming families watched their allocations vanish when federal officials declared a 2022 shortage. These growers held the lowest priority water rights in Arizona. When cuts came, they absorbed them first. Cotton fields that had produced for generations cracked and browned. Alfalfa acreage went fallow. Family operations that survived dust bowls and recessions could not survive losing their water. Tribal nations that spent decades battling through federal courts to secure water rights saw those rights dissolve in a shortage they played no part in creating. And the lake itself began revealing what the water had concealed for decades. Receding shorelines exposed metal barrels containing human remains from the 1970s. A World War II landing craft emerged from the mud near Overton Arm, sitting untouched on the lake bed for 80 years. Each discovery generated headlines, but every headline delivered the same underlying message. The water keeps dropping. The lake keeps exposing what it swallowed. The Colorado River still flows. Hoover Dam still stands. But the reservoir sits 170 feet below its designed operating level. Power output weakens with every foot of decline. Farms downstream stretch less water across fewer acres each season. The river itself no longer completes its journey. A waterway powerful enough to excavate the Grand Canyon across 6 million years now evaporates in the Sonoran Desert, miles short of the ocean it once reached. 895 feet is no longer a forecast. It is a trajectory. But the story is not over. The 2026 negotiations will determine whether 40 million people face this crisis with a coherent plan or without one. These talks are happening right now, and unlike most policy battles, this one has a visible scoreboard. The Bureau of Reclamation publishes daily lake-level readings at usbr.gov. You can watch the numbers yourself, see exactly where the water sits, track whether it rises or falls with each passing week. Organizations like the Colorado River Research Group monitor every development in the negotiations. They publish updates, analysis, and context that cuts through political spin. If you want to understand what the states are actually proposing, the information exists. And if you live anywhere in the basin, your local water authority almost certainly has conservation programs already making a measurable difference. Las Vegas cut per capita water use by more than 50% over 2 decades while adding 800,000 residents. It can be done. It is being done. The math is brutal, but it is no longer invisible. This is one of those rare moments where the decisions being made right now will echo for generations. The negotiators know the public is watching. The pressure matters. The attention matters. What happens next is not written yet. We can make true and measurable change. What do you think? Can 7 states agree before the clock runs out? Or does the federal government have to step in and force a solution nobody wants? Drop your take in the comments. And if you want to follow the forces quietly reshaping our world before the headlines catch up, subscribe now. This story is just getting started.